Our brains have become hardwired to seeing the government being put on the mat and critiqued for every sin of commission and omission, scorned, ridiculed, shredded every waking hour of the day and night by all of us, the media and the common man. Fair enough, I say, this is part of the democratic process and expression. But it makes me think that do we critique the opposition in the same way? Even though the opposition does not hold the levers of power, they have an equally vital role to play in upholding the democratic process. But do we question or rather critique their role? After all, in a democratic field of play, there are two goalposts, not one. But we choose to ignore the role and the responsibilities of the opposition and focus all our attention on the government in power. So today I thought it would be a good idea if we could reverse the state of play and look at things from the opposing end. We live in an era of hyper-kinetic blame games and accusations. We question everyone else's conduct but our own. Time to turn the spotlight on those making the charge, the finger pointers of a democratic process. Hi and welcome all to the CAA show. My name is Juggi Bhasin. CAA is, of course, conversations and analysis. Charity, they say, begins at home, and good conduct and sober behavior for our political parties should ideally begin in Parliament. Not for nothing is the Parliament called the Temple of Democracy. But in these times, this temple often resembles a section of Crawford Market in Mumbai, where different entities are selling their wares at the top of their voices, cursing, swearing, shouting down their competition, a kind of bazaar of unrestrained behavior, charges being peddled and flung at each other with gay abandon. In hindsight, it is unbelievable that Mr. Rahul Gandhi in 2020 made remarks against the Prime Minister that young men will beat Mr. Modi with a danda one day. The Prime Minister alluded to these remarks in his speech in Parliament. It would be tiresome for me to say that this was a new low for politics in India. All that has been said before. What is more important is, what do these vituperative and inflammatory remarks represent? Do they represent the role of the opposition to usher in a state of anarchy, a mindset of thuggery, a will of the mind that it is my way or the highway, a firm rejection of the democratic vote count, and above all, a call to a radicalization of youth to take to the streets? Or is it simply the last stand of an entitled politician tilting against the windmills, hoping by use of bluff and bluster and Twitter to secure back lost vistas of patronage, political feudalism, and the opportunity to operate behind the scenes to exercise power without responsibility? Whatever the case, know this: for every action, there is an opposite reaction. The CAA agitation tore the country and polarized communities. The Kisan agitation goes on and on. Maybe for once, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been proven successful. Bands of youth with danda in their hands do roam our streets. With apologies to the apologists justifying such behavior that this is a vibrant and a raucous democracy at work, I say it is more like a rabble at work, a lumpen in the making, a mob at work, uprooting the very tent of democracy. So, often one hears the charge of the opposition that the BJP regime had destroys or is destroying institutions. So, if the opposition heckles, screams, and shouts, shows placards, does not allow the treasury benches to respond, Is it upholding the sanctity of the most venerable institution of them all, a parliament? The moral ambiguity and sheer hypocrisy of the opposition argument gets a cutting edge when the same opposition leaders confabulate with section of liberal democracies in the West, their so-called non-for-profit human rights institutions, Western media and academia to critique, criticize, and interfere in India's administrative, social, security, and intra-community relations. There was a time, not so long ago in the past, when the opposition would never interfere in defense and external affairs matters of the country. There was always complete consensus on such matters. Today, nothing is kosher in the meal placed on the table. From the scrapping of Article 370 to the handling of the pandemic, the CAA and the Kisan agitation, to the detention of anarchists in jail, to the court-ordered eviction of Koregaon slum dwellers, international bodies, UN rapporteurs, foreign governments interfere in each issue. And why should they not? The opposition is standing near the rail line, waving the green flag, giving the free pass to the foreign interference train. From questioning the authenticity of the Balakot attack and the will of the Indian soldier to face off against the Chinese aggression, the opposition has crossed all red lines of shame and restraint repeatedly. We no longer need Pakistan to internationalize our issues, including that of Kashmir. The opposition in the country is just doing a fine job of it. The irony is that while our opposition in bed with Western liberal left forces is dismantling India's stature and image in the eyes of the world, piece by piece, the same Western bodies zealously safeguard their democratic debate levels in their parliaments and House of Senators. The same Western forces have a model of shadow government where shadow ministers with a great deal of research and diligence critique real ministers of the cabinet, offering suggestions, improvements, and criticism, but always in the politest way. But here, the opposition has hooliganized social media with personal attacks and foul language to an extreme. The sight and the politics of a 50-year-old Rahul Gandhi calling 70-year-old Prime Minister Modi as Chaukidar Chor hai is not a mere debasement of political rhetoric. It is a rejection of Indian civilization heritage where we always speak with respect of elders. It is an advertisement of the bankruptcy of the user's own moral and ethical code. It is also a reflection that such men and women are there in politics to serve vested interests and settle political scores and not to serve the country. It is, in the final analysis, a passing of age, of sobriety, decency, and all the values we hold so dear, which we had secured at great cost in our freedom struggle. Today, we do not know who yields greater power, Mr. Rahul Gandhi or the influencer designing and operating his inflammatory tweet. It is, in a sense, the ultimate debasement of the political process. Instead of stopping to reflect and turn back, men stripped of power conjure more and more extreme ways to attract attention and grab power by any which way. The next step of transition from a young to a mature democracy can only come, in my opinion, if both the government and the opposition live up to their roles. And we, the people, remember that accountability cuts both ways. So that is all for today. Goodbye and subscribe to us. Cheers and have a good night, everyone.